Let's talk about baseless speculation. It's pretty easy for me, an incredibly knowledgeable individual, to point at a G1 winner and ask, when are you gonna add this horse, Cygames? Eventually I'll be right and my clout will be limitless. A while ago, I sent out a survey asking the incredibly good-looking fans of this channel who they want to see in Umamusume. I also of course did my own research, and a pretty good number of horses I found were also mentioned there. So I'm gonna go over what I found and I'll go over what everyone submitted at the end. That's right, what everyone submitted. Nobody can ever say I'm not committed. Just so people know who was talked about the most on the survey, if they did appear there, I'll give them a little special sticker to show how many times their name showed up. Let's cover our obvious bases first. There are a few Triple Crown and Triple Tiara racers who haven't been implemented yet but very well could be. Shinzan was the second Japanese Triple Crown horse between Saint Light and Mr. CB. He had a very impressive record of 15 wins and 4 second place finishes in 19 races, with other victories coming from the Autumn Tenosho and Arima Keenan. Shinzan was called a sharp horse based on his running style, and even had his own kind of horseshoe made because he was working his hind legs so hard that they knocked against his front legs. They couldn't use those horseshoes for racing, but for training they helped him get used to running. There was concern when the Kika show came around, as despite winning the Satsuki show and Japan Derby, Shinzan hadn't taken first in the open races surrounding them, but as was routine for him, blew past expectations to become a Triple Crown horse in the same year that the Olympics came to Japan. I think Shinzan has a pretty solid chance to be implemented, but the main issue is that he raced in a period all by himself. That hasn't stopped Cygames before, such as in Maruzensky's case, but there could be some creativity displayed for an in-game story. Contrail is the 8th and most recent Triple Crown winner, winning it in 2020. Contrail was thrust into the Triple Crown races after winning the 2019 Hopeful Stakes. Having fended off Salios in the former 2 races, both by less than a length, Contrail's Triple Crown journey ended with him beating out Aristoteles by a neck, becoming the first father-son duo to be an undefeated Triple Crown racer, having been sired by Deep Impact. Contrail met with rival Almond Eye, undefeated Triple Tiara winner Daring Tact, and contemporaries Giseki, Glory Vase, and Karen Bouquet d'Or in that year's Japan Cup, where he would fall to the might of Almond Eye. I expect Contrail to be implemented not only because he's a Triple Crown horse, but because of his rivals being implemented already. Also, I've been reliably informed by the survey that he stretches like a cat to rest, and he's so chill that he was put between Kazuna and Epiphania at his home farm to keep them from fighting. Liberty Island is our most recent and 7th overall Triple Tiara winner, having won all 3 races in 2023. Though she had won the Hanshin Juvenile Fillies race, she also had a fierce showing in the Japan Cup, as she would be competing against Equinox. Though she wouldn't defeat Equinox, losing by half a length, her trainer was still very impressed with how she competed against notable horses all the way around in that race, so expectations were very high for her. She'd be sent on excursion the following year, notching podium finishes in the 2024 runnings of the Dubai Shima Classic and Hong Kong Cup. She continued her excursion in 2025, placing 8th in the Dubai Turf, and continued to Hong Kong for the Queen Elizabeth II Cup a few weeks later, but during this race she would suffer severe ligament damage and would lose her life that same day at only 5 years old. Her jockey noted that she protected him and acted calmly and smartly despite the injury, and the staff at Hong Kong had done all they could, but there was nothing they could do. I do think that Liberty Island has a place in Umamusume, but seeing as how we're just over a year removed from that, it may take some time for that wound to heal. The other 2 from this list, Deep Impact and Apapane, are in a bit of a fog, so I'm going to talk about them a little bit later. Changing gears, apart from the standard Triple Crown and Triple Tiara, we can also cover the vaunted Dirt Triple Crown, which is won by winning the Haneda High, Tokyo Derby, and Japan Dirt Classic. Admittedly, it's a little weird to look at these, since the only one of those races that's in Umamusume is the latter, and it was renamed to the Japan Dirt Derby, and there are a lot of other extenuating situations with the Dirt Triple Crown, but I don't want to talk about the intricacies of the NAR, so I'm just going to imagine that Cygames can add in races if they felt like it. Consequently, the only Umamusume who have only ever won any of these races were Furioso and Forever Young, who both won the Japan Dirt Classic. The first Japanese Dirt Triple Crown horse was Orion the Thanks, whose best year was indisputably 1999, winning 5 races, placing 3rd in the Tokyo Okon show, and then another race we don't have to talk about. He experienced a myriad of results in his following few years, placing on the podium the same amount of times he placed 15th. But that does include 2 more victories. He also had his final race in Saga, which I never see, so I thought that was interesting to point out. Toshin Blizzard, much like Orion the Thanks, got off to a hot start. From 2000 to 2002, he won 9 races and took 2 podium finishes. However, following this, he'd need to take a year off due to injury and started seeing worse results. For the rest of his career, he got 6 podium finishes in 17 races. It's worth noting that he also placed second to Agnes Digital in the 2002 February Stakes, and for those who know how good Agnes Digital was, to be compared to him is a great compliment. Mick Fire is not only the most recent winner, but was also undefeated when he won the Dirt Triple Crown in 2023. Including wins from 2022, he won 7 straight races and set records in both the Haneda High and Tokyo Derby. His last couple years were far less successful though, as he ran into the likes of Ushba Tessero and didn't take a podium finish in any races beyond his initial 7 7 win streak, as he would uncharacteristically hang out towards the back of all his races, which isn't what brought him success in his first and second years. Also, he likes sweet potatoes. He loves them so much that he got a sweet potato after winning the NAR Best 3-Year-Old Horse Award. This is vital information about Mick Fire, who I think is probably the most likely of these horses to get an implementation. Another obvious place to look would be at the highest earning Japanese race horses. Just to save time, I pretty much expect all these horses to be implemented at some point. Ushba Tessero is one of the first names that should come to your mind when thinking of high-earning horses. He had mixed results in his first few years, but in 2022 and 2023, he switched from racing on turf to racing on dirt courses. Ushba Tessero competed in 13 races and won 8 of them, including the Tokyo Daishoten twice. He also competed overseas starting in 2023, collecting a win in the Dubai World Cup and otherwise 3 podium finishes. Having won 6 graded dirt races, Ushba Tessero sits comfortably in second place in career earnings at the time of writing, behind Forever Young, of whom he lost to in the 2024 Tokyo Daishoten and 2025 Saudi Cup. He gained a reputation as a quote, lazy salary worker due to his demeanor in the paddock since he appears unmotivated, which obviously wasn't true, but pretty funny. The horse directly below Ushba Tessero in total earnings is probably the most anticipated horse who could be implemented in umamusume, Equinox. Despite only racing in 10 races, Equinox set record times in both the Autumn Tenosho and Dubai Shima Classic, which made up 2 of his 6 G1 victories, all of which he won in a row, becoming the 3rd horse in history to do so, which was first done by TM Opera O. Equinox was also the first horse ever to cross the 2 billion yen earnings mark. While competing, his trainer noted that Equinox was able to switch from calm and lethargic while resting to laser-focused and aggressive when racing. As Equinox has never raced against a horse with umamusume representation, the obvious ties are with his sire Kitasan Black and dam sire King Halo. Apparently, since he stays at the same farm as his father, he's a big influence on him and behaves very similarly to Kitasan Black. I'd hope we wouldn't be saddled with the same personality in 2 different characters, but it's definitely something to pull from. Panthalassa enters the discussion next. He barely carries an umamusume tie, as his dam sire was famed European horse Mancha, otherwise known as Broy. He raced for 4 years and collected 4 graded victories, most notably in both the Saudi Cup and Dubai Turf, but was a stalwart graded race competitor in his later years, amassing 1.8 billion yen in earnings, though his results were all over the place during his career. Panthalassa has the nickname Reiwa-era Twin Turbo for his front-running abilities, often aiming to lead from the start. He also drew comparisons to Silent Suzuka, particularly when he covered 1,000 meters in the Autumn Tenosho in 57.4 seconds, the same exact time Silent Suzuka covered in his final ill-fated race. Having earned 1.5 billion yen, Shaharayer is another horse who claimed victories overseas, as after he set a record in the Mainichi High and winning the Japan Derby, he was sent abroad in all of his latter 3 years, collecting a victory in the 2022 Dubai Shima Classic and 3rd place finishes in both his runnings of the Breeders' Cup Turf. Shaharayer collected no victories after his Dubai Shima Classic win, but managed to compete well enough throughout his career. Shaharayer typically exhibited strange behavior before races, with several instances of him jogging in place or being nervous before competing, but was otherwise noted as being an intelligent racer. He's another horse who's never raced with an umamusume character, but if Equinox is being added, then Shaharayer would make a good companion character for him. Finally, this brings us to Lisgracio, who got the most entries in the survey, and deservedly so, because she's one of the strongest mares in history. Let's go over some of her accomplishments. She set a record in her 2nd ever race, is one of 6 Japanese horses to have won a race in Australia, which almost won her the Australian Horse of the Year award, has an 86% podium rate, won 3 G1s back-to-back, and was the latter half of the 2nd ever father-daughter combo to win the Arima Keenan behind her sire Heart's Cry. Somehow I feel like that says enough. The Elegant Lily made a career out of her tenacity, and though she ended up a silver collector, need I remind you how difficult it is to place in horse races, let alone win one? Alright, I think those are the pretty obvious bases, so let's get weird. I'm gonna show you an image of 4 umamusume designs that were shown off in 2016. You should be able to recognize 2 of them, so make sure you put a timestamp by your guesses, and I swear if you cheat, I'll know. Bam! Make your guesses now. Aw man, it's so exciting. And out of time. So obviously, the top left umamusume is very similar to the design of Buena Vista, so that one was simple. The umamusume in the lower right you may have seen if you were ever looking up Orfever images, as this was theorized to be her original design. Quite the glow up. I guess I should note that these are speculatory based on what fans have come up with, but if fans can speculate that Tazuna is Tokino Minoru, I'm willing to believe that. Buena Vista and Orfever, 2 very successful horses, were pulled from being among the debut lineup, but were implemented years down the line, whereas the other 2 have yet to be seen ever again. The other 2 horses we have here are surmised to be Deep Impact and King Kamehameha, who are both in a unique situation thanks to their ownership. So here's some legal jargon for you on how Cygames goes about adding new horses to umamusume. The first thing they do is nothing. That's because they technically don't have to do anything since they already own the rights to every horse's name due to an agreement with the JRA. As far as you and I know, if they wanted to go down the path of evil, they can put whoever they want in the game if they want to. Instead though, they get additional permission from the horse's owners. Both Orfevre and Buena Vista are owned by Sunday Racing, who either didn't give Cygames permission to use them in the game at first, or did and they changed their mind around the time Cygames put out that trailer that hypothetically may have caused the game to be delayed. Sunday Racing is historically very careful about their prestigious horses, as they should be, so it would take them years to reach an agreement with each other. That brings us back to Deep Impact and King Kamehameha. Both these horses are owned by Makoto Kaneko, who, to put it lightly, has not given Cygames permission to use any horses he owns in Umamusume. This also extends to Apapane, who I mentioned earlier. Kaneko actually owns quite a few interesting horses that I want to cover in addition to that group as well. But first, the 6th Triple Crown horse of Japan, Deep Impact, is one of the horses most notable by their absence in Umamusume. He won 7 G1 races, including a record-setting win at the 2006 Spring Tenno Show. If he hadn't lost by half a length in the 2005 Arima Keenan, he would have also won 11 graded races in a row. Apart from his racing pedigree, he's also famous for his progeny. Having not only sired 7 Umamusume characters, which is second most behind Sunday Silence, he was the leading sire in Japan for 10 years straight and was the leading broodmare sire for 3 years after that. It's insane how often you look at the pedigree charts for horses and see Deep Impact's name there. Deep Impact was referred to as the valedictorian in his time and was noted as being very dog-like, referring to his calm and gentle demeanor. Deep Impact isn't without his controversy though. In the 2006 Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe, he entered as the favorite but ended up taking 3rd place. Following this race, he was disqualified from this finish after it was found he had ipratropium in his system, which is used for breathing problems, as this wasn't allowed for use in France where it was in Japan. It wasn't long after this that Deep Impact's retirement was announced. The other half of that teaser image, King Kamehameha, had a shorter career that was put to a stop after suffering a tendon injury. When he did race though, he raced very well and was met with great success, getting podium finishes in all 8 of his races, only marred by a 3rd place finish in an allowance race. King Kamehameha also set a record in the Japan Derby that stood for almost 20 years until it was broken by his own progeny, Duramente, by 0.1 second. King Kamehameha instilled nothing but confidence in his jockey, who was quoted after the Japan Derby saying the win was almost a given. He was also notably an incredibly calm horse, with one such story coming out that during a storm after his retirement, lightning struck nearby which threw every horse into a panic aside from King Kamehameha, who retained his composure. The 3rd Triple Tiara horse, Apapane, won 4 G1 races in 2 years and otherwise had a very mixed record. Her victory at the Japanese Oaks was probably her most interesting, as she finished in a dead heat with Saint Emilion, which caused a crazy 10-minute delay to deliberate a photo finish. Apart from her Triple Tiara races, she also managed to snag victory in the 2011 Victoria Mile from Buena Vista, and also had a not so successful and brief trip to Hong Kong. Apapane was also apparently famous for her beautiful eyes, so take that as you will, I guess. Kurafune is allegedly technically already in Umamusume as Perry Steam from Beginning of a New Era, but until they give Sunvisor her true name, then I won't be satisfied. Kurafune's most interesting race stat is that he has 4 record times, 2 in a maiden and allowance race and 2 in dirt races, one of which being the Japan Cup Dirt, now known as the Champions Cup, which I know you still haven't won in the game. Having also won the Mainichi High and NHK Mile Cup, Kurafune looked to be another horse on a monstrous path to legendary status, but his career was cut short due to injury. Kurafune was said to be very friendly with other horses in his barn, particularly with Heart's Cry, who didn't get along well with other horses. Sired by Fuji Kiseki, Kane Hakili won 7 G1 races, including a record-setting win at the 2005 Japan Cup Dirt. His 2005 year in particular stands out as he won 7 of 9 races. As he was racing at the same time to similar success on dirt, he also got the nickname Deep Impact of the Sand, like Gara the Sand. That wasn't part of the script, I just realized that now. After this year, he only raced 3 times over each of the following 4 years due to health and injury concerns. His final race was an excursion to America for the Breeders' Cup, in which he placed 2nd. Kane Hakili's repeated returns after injuries and still picking up victories is essentially the quintessential story for an Umamusume character. To wrap this section up, I'd like to talk about Sodashi. Sodashi is a pure white horse, and this is important because much like gray horses had a stigma about them until Aguri Cap and Tamama Cross came around, white horses were stigmatized to be sensitive, high maintenance, and couldn't win races. This was exemplified in that a pure white horse hadn't won a race in general until 2008, when 2 other horses owned by Kaneko would break those barriers as brothers Yuki-chan and White Vessel became the first pure white horses in JRA history to win a race in general, and then a graded race. This would make Sodashi's victory at the 2020 Hanshin Juvenile Fillies the first ever G1 victory by a pure white horse. Sodashi ended up picking up 2 other G1 wins in her career, being the Shuka Show and Victoria Mile, and overall had a very good career. Sodashi was noted as being a very smart horse who liked to play and get attention. Obviously, I'm not trying to start a give Cygames permission Kaneko Echo movement, but these are a strong selection of horses with strong reputations in Japan. It'd be a shame to not see them, but at the end of the day, it's the owner's prerogative. Let's get away from batches of achievements and talk about individual horses who I've seen while doing my own research for videos. Doduce is probably one of the most common horses you've heard people talk about when it comes to implementation. Doduce won 5 G1s, including setting the record at the 2022 Japan Derby, and had a shot at becoming the second Autumn Triple Crown horse after winning the Autumn Tenosho and Japan Cup, but had to pull out of the Arima Keenan due to injury after receiving a record number of votes. He also ended up breaking a super specific jinx that horses who win the Asahi High Futurity Stakes and Japan Derby can't win any G1s after that point, which plagued horses we know like Mihono Bourbon, Narita Brine, and Sakura Chiono O. They call Doduce the second coming of Special Week not only because of the similarities over their career, but because the two put away massive amounts of food, getting the nickname Reiwa's Japanese leader. I think it's pretty much a matter of time for Doduce to be implemented. Lord Kanaloa is in a bit of an interesting position overall. Of all the horses we've talked about, I'm willing to bet Lord Kanaloa is one you've heard of but haven't heard talked about in much reverence. He, however, won 6 G1 races, including record-setting finishes at the Sprinter Stakes and Takamatsu no Miyakin, both of which he held at the same time, and the Hong Kong Sprint twice, which is one of the world's premier sprint races. I'm also not sure if you did the math on his record, but he has a 100% podium finish in 19 races, which is insane. Deservedly thought of as one of the best sprinters in the world, he unfortunately took a backseat in fans' minds behind Orfevre and Gentle Donna, who were dominating the racing scene at that time. All people on this earth know that umamusume needs more sprinter representation, so Lord Kanaloa should be at the forefront of this discussion. Also, there's a famous story that he had a crush on his greatest rival Kurinchan, and I think that's funny. Deidre is a horse who I ran into when researching the excursion video. That makes sense because of her 33 races, 15 of them were raced in 7 foreign countries. She also spent her final 2 years of racing almost exclusively racing overseas. She was pretty competitive when racing in Japan as well, collecting most notably a victory in the Shuka Show among 2 other graded victories. I think it's more or less an outside chance for Deidre to get implemented, but if we do any more excursion stories and she isn't included, then I'd be a little surprised. Another horse from the excursion research is Asian Preston, who, as you may expect, is owned by the same person who owns Asian Flash. Asian Preston was bred in America, but was brought over to Japan where he would win 4 graded races, but he also had success in Hong Kong, where he won the Hong Kong Mile and Queen Elizabeth II Cup twice after visiting several times in his latter 3 years of racing. Asian Preston may not have the most impressive record in 32 races, but is another frequent excursionist who I'd give an outside chance to. Omega Perfume is another dirt runner who's on this list for a very special quirk he got in his career. 4 of his 11 wins were G1 wins, but what's funny about them is all of those wins came in the Tokyo Daishoten from 2018 to 2021. Joining horses like Smart Falcon and Hoko Taramai in winning the race multiple times, but becoming the first Japanese horse to win the same international G1 4 times in a row. I don't have a lot of details about his personality, but he seems like a big loving lug. Not only is Toho Jackal the other true horse responsible in the 12 billion yen incident, he also had one of the best performances in long distance history in his only graded victory. By winning the 2014 Kika Show, he became the horse with the shortest time from debut to graded victory in just 143 days, as he was critically ill before debuting at the age of 3, and broke not only the Kika Show record by 1.7 seconds, but also set a 3,000 meter record in general after beating Narita Top Road's 2001 Hanshin Daishoten record by 1.5 seconds, and became Special Week's first colt to win a G1, interestingly winning a race that Special Week himself lost. Admittedly, Toho Jackal had very little success out of 2014, so a story revolving around the Kika Show, which I hear takes place in the second year of a 3-year career mode, could be difficult, but his story alone of coming back from his fever is enough to warrant something akin to a rice shower arc in an anime. Oh boy, another Mejiro! But this time it's from an era of horses that could do with a smidge more representation. Mejiro Montsenis was constantly a thorn in the side of would-be Triple Crown horse Mr. CB, as he placed second in both the Satsuki Show and Japan Derby and defeated Katsuragi Ace in the very famous Hagi Stakes. He didn't have a lot of success otherwise, but did manage to get a victory in the Takamatsu no Miyakin, which at that point was a 2,000 meter race, but there is an opportunity for comedy there. I think throwing a Mejiro in with Simbali Rudolph could also lead to some good story opportunities. For some reason I always come back to Mejiro Montsenis, I can't explain it. Dinah Actress is actually another horse from Cinderella Grey who is speculated to be renamed to Dynamo Heroine. She didn't get a lot of opportunity to shine in Sin Grey, losing to the likes of Aguri Cap and Tamamo Cross, but did have a pretty serious rivalry with Mejiro Ramono. The two of them competed in the Triple Tiara races, with Dinah Actress falling to second and third in the first 2, and a climatic clash was set for the Rose Stakes heading into the Shuka Show, but Dinah Actress suffered an injury and was forced to pull away from her rival, who went on to become the first ever Triple Tiara horse. If there's no story there, I don't know where there is. Fan sentiment is that because the grading system was new at the time, Dinah Actress sorta got screwed over and was actually a pretty good miler, but since there were scant G1 options for mile races, she never got to show off her true talents. Lemon Pop is another prolific dirt horse who, in Japan, never took placement below second but had horrible results overseas. While foreign races may not have been his forte, he did manage to pick up 3 G1 wins and 3 listed G1 wins, including consecutive victories at both the Mile Championship Nambu and Champions Cup, which also led to him winning the JRA award for Best Dirt Horse in consecutive years as well. Lemon Pop is most famous for being absolutely huge. Dirt racers are typically way bigger than those that run on turf, but Lemon Pop was considered even big for his own category. Maurice is another horse who popped up a lot in the excursion video, and he was no slouch. He struggled a bit to start off, but in 2015 went undefeated with 6 victories, winning both the Yasuda Keenan and Mile Championship, which is a feat completed by scant few horses including a Gurry Cap, Taiki Shuttle, and Gran Allegria, and by the way, he won the Hong Kong Mile in the same year. He'd continue to get good numbers in 2016, winning the Champions Mile, Hong Kong Cup, and Autumn Tenosho before retiring that year. Maurice is exactly the kind of horse you want for a career mode in umamusume considering his dominance, particularly as one of the greatest mile racers we've ever seen from Japan. Maurice also resembles his grandfather Grass Wonder not only in looks, but also in the fact that he eats flowers. As one does. Admire Moon's name also came up a lot in the research for the excursion video, as he took a victory in the Dubai Duty Free among other podium finishes abroad. Of Admire Moon's 17 races, he only finished off the podium 3 times. His best year was likely his last, as he won 3 G1s, ending on a victory in the Japan Cup. Admire Moon's race history honestly gives off the kind of vibes you would expect from a story protagonist, with some struggles mixed in with some victories, none of which were particularly overwhelming, so I think there's a solid chance here. Euphoria is another more recent horse who started off incredibly hot, winning 6 of his first 7 races, including the Satsuki Show, Autumn Tenosho, and Arima Keenan, of which he received the highest amount of votes for. Euphoria struggled in his following years, however, not managing a single podium finish in 2022 or 2023. He'd retire in 2023 after suffering an irregular heartbeat. Apparently, because of the way his eyes appear to have dark circles around them, he always kind of gives off the same blunt expression. Euphoria would be difficult to build a story around considering his really small pool of races to pull from, but I've seen horses with shorter careers get implemented. Vermilion's G1 victories include the Kawasaki Keenan, JBC Classic, Japan Cup Dirt, Tokyo Daishoten February Stakes, and Teo Show. He also set records in 3 of those races and won the Kawasaki Keenan twice and JBC Classic 3 times. So he's got quite the pedigree here, which is also a horse joke because his sire was El Condor Pasa. He also won 5 G1 races on 5 different race courses, which is tied for a record among other racers including Espoir City, Gentle Donna, and Hoko Taramai. Famous jockey Yutaka Take recently reported that Vermilion was one of the easiest horses he'd ever rode because he followed instructions but basically just ran how he wanted. Vermilion's dominance over the dirt scene would definitely lean me towards supporting him as an umamusume. The last horse I want to talk about for the moment is Rey de Oro. Rey de Oro also had a strong first 3 years of racing, finishing on the podium 11 times in 12 races and taking wins in the Hopeful Stakes, Japan Derby, and Autumn Tenosho. From an umamusume perspective, he's probably best known for his loss in the 2018 Arima Keenan to underdog Blast One Piece. He's also got ties through his dam sire Symbolic Chris S. Over a 3-year period, there's definitely enough here to work with in a career aspect and from the rival perspective, so I'd give Rey de Oro a good chance of implementation. The next thing I want to talk about is pretty unique. If we're talking about new scenarios Cygames could do, I feel like they might want to take a look at another aspect of horse sport, steeplechase. In case you're not familiar, steeplechase is race meets obstacle course. They're usually long races and feature jumping over hurdles and water and the like. It's a whole different beast. Believe it or not, there are a few umamusume characters who have also participated in steeplechase, and I think that could open up the possibility for an obstacle course themed scenario. These umamusume include Ikuno Dictus, Mejiro Palmer, and probably most importantly, Samson Big. Why most importantly? Because she still hasn't been implemented after being announced in 2023. That doesn't count. You could have them as scenario links alongside 2 other racers who, though they were more famous in steeplechase, also participated in graded races. Nishino Daisy had pretty poor race results during his career of 2018 to 2022, but really shone in the steeplechase portion of his career, winning 3 times among 8 podium finishes in 12 chases. Nishino Daisy, having won the G3 Sapporo 2-year-old stakes, is also on a short list of horses who have won both a graded race and graded chase. He's also descended from Agnes Tachyon, Saiyan Sky, and Nishino Flower on his mother's side. Of course, a descendant of Stay Gold would go down as one of the best steeplechase horses in Japan. To give you an idea, over his 9-year career, Oju Chosun was so popular that he won the JRA Best Steeplechase Horse Award 5 times, and despite never having competed in a race before, managed to get the 3rd most votes for the 2018 Arima Keenan behind Almond Eye and Rey de Oro, and actually partook in the race, but only came in 9th. Oju Chosan not only has the most wins in Japanese steeplechase, but is also the oldest horse to win a chase, having won the JG1 Nakayama Grand Jump at a staggering 11 years old. He's also alleged to have a fierce personality, go figure. If Sai Games wanted to represent the steeplechase aspect of horse racing, then they have little choice but to include Oju Chosan. Turning the calendar forward, there are of course other modern horses who we could definitely see go the Forever Young route of getting implemented while they're active, but I think Forever Young might be in a special case. That said, there are a few modern horses who are finding enough success that I would warrant them having an argument to be implemented sooner rather than later. Croix du Nord is probably the most famous of this pack, having raced for a few years to good success. Croix du Nord's graded victories include the Hopeful Stakes, Japan Derby, Osaka High, Spring Tenosho, and an overseas win in the Prix du Prince d'Orange. He also competed in the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe, leading for a bit but falling all the way down to 14th. Apart from his obvious link to Kitasan Black, Croix du Nord also shares a startling relation to Chronogenesis, as both share a farm, owner, trainer, and initial jockey. Much like Equinox though, he behaves pretty much similarly to his father. Museum Mile is a somewhat unspoken of horse until he really started showing off recently. Over the past year, he's been competing in exclusively G2 and G1 races, taking victories in 3, including at the most recent Arima Keenan, and setting the record in the Satsuki show before being cost the chance at the Triple Crown by Croix du Nord. At the moment, Museum Mile is yet to race in 2026 after having registered for overseas races that he didn't participate in. Masquerade Ball completes the trio, having won the Kyoto News High and Autumn Tenosho in 2025 after coming up short in both the Satsuki show and Japan Derby. Nonetheless, Masquerade Ball's record currently has him with the best podium finish percent of all 3 of these horses. He most recently came in second at the Hong Kong Queen Elizabeth II Cup. He also has a funny quirk of being much better at left than right turns for some reason. On the flip side, there are also some really old horses. These horses might not be implemented as playable characters, but could be scenario links like your Twinkle Legends or 3 Goddesses of the world. There's admittedly little information out there about undefeated racer Kitano Daio, but I just wanted to include him here for the simple reason that he was called the return of Tokino Minoru, who is definitely not represented in Umamusume. I'm turning on the fans. He was also marred with injury troubles and actually retired after one particular injury so as to not risk his undefeated status. It's definitely an outside shot for sure, but maybe he could take the role of a Speed Symboli or Saint Light, for example. Keeping the theme of really old, undefeated racehorses with almost no chance to be anything other than a scenario-specific character, we have Kurifuji, who would later be known as Toshifuji. Kurifuji set records in both the Japan Derby and final running of the Yokohama Keenan, as well as being not only in a select group of fillies who won the Japan Derby, but as far as I can tell is the only horse to have ever won both the Japan Derby and Japanese Oaks, which is maybe a technicality, but I think that's an important fact. So long as I'm right. Don't let the record fool you with Dainana Hoshu, because it's deceptive. Dainana Hoshu actually raced in 29 races, but most of them were open races. Still, he did collect victories in the Satsuki show and Kika show, as well as a 4th place finish in the Japan Derby. He had 23 total wins in his career and set a record in the Kyoto Keenan as well. Oh well, I think it's about that time. Let's have a look at every other horse who was submitted on the glorious TGimlet Big Horse Survey. Another of Kitasan Black's progeny, Gaia Force has 2 G1 wins in the St. Light Keenan and Fuji Stakes, but surrounding those are a lot of G1 races that he didn't perform well in. He's collected 2nd place finishes in the Milers Cup, Yasuda Keenan, Mile Championship, and interestingly the February Stakes, so there's the making of a pretty good miler here. Gaia Force really shines with his personality though, smiling at the camera, playing around with his staff. If comedy value were the key to getting implemented, then Gaia Force should be a frontrunner. Meisho Samson also has a pretty impressive record, but is overall a streaky racehorse. He landed on the podium in exactly 2/3 of his races though, so overall he was pretty successful. He's also a double crown horse, having won the Satsuki show and Japan Derby before dropping the Kika show to Song of Wind. He also carried a calm demeanor, particularly during retirement, where he was the boss of the other horses on the farm. I wouldn't be surprised to see him implemented, but the matter of deep impact presence would need to be navigated against. The current record holder of the Takamatsu no Miya Keenan, Satono Reeve, is more of a short distancer than his other Satono counterparts. His 4 graded wins, 2 of which are in the aforementioned Takamatsu no Miya Keenan, are also paired with 3 podium finishes from overseas, competing in both Hong Kong and Europe. It should come as no surprise that Satono Reeve carries the blood of not only Lord Kanaloa, but famous sprinter Sakura Bakushin-o. Satono Reeve is still racing, but more Satono representation I feel could be welcomed. Agnes Flight, who is Agnes Tachion's older brother in real life, is the opposite end of the photo finish that saw Air Shakura lose the Japan Derby to become a quasi-Triple Crown horse. That victory would be his only G1 win, and his less than stellar record, especially after his first year, makes it hard to argue for his implementation. He is, however, part of a short list of horses who won a classic race whose dam also won a classic race, as Agnes Flora won the 1990 Oka show. Interestingly enough, Agnes Flora's dam, Agnes Lady, also won the 1979 Japanese Oaks, giving us a 3-generation classic winner timeline. Vega, interestingly enough, is on the exact opposite side of that short list, having been the dam of Admire Vega who won the Japan Derby when she herself won the Oka show and Japanese Oaks. Vega only raced for 2 years, her first being her best one as she took podium finishes in 6 of 7 races before falling into a slump and then getting a leg fracture that ended her career. She did end up becoming a pretty successful dam in her own right, however. I think Vega has a decent chance of getting in, but her lack of umamusume rivals might make it difficult. Daiwa Scarlet's older brother has quite the trophy case. He's won back-to-back mile championships after placing second in his first one, and also took victories in the Satsuki Show, Autumn Tenosho, and Yasuda Kinen. Daiwa Major also took back-to-back third-place finishes in the Arima Kinen, including in the one that was his final race in which he finished behind second-place Daiwa Scarlet. He switched jockeys a lot in his early years, but found much more success when consistently racing under Katsumi Ando. He was pretty famous for his unwillingness to leave the paddock on multiple occasions. I think Daiwa Major has a pretty good case, especially for being one of the better milers I've seen on this list so far. Conveniently, one of Daiwa Major's biggest rivals was Dance in the Mood, who raced against him several times in 2006. Dance in the Mood got off to a crazy start, winning 4 straight races, including the Oka Show, before losing the Japanese Oaks and then taking second at the American Oaks. Dance in the Mood would have a foreign victory years later, winning the Cash Call Mile Stakes, which is now known as the Royal Heroine Stakes, setting the speed record which still stands to this day. Her only other victory was in the Victoria Mile. I think Dance in the Mood can get in based on whether or not Daiwa Major does, since the two are basically intrinsically linked. A Golden Generation Double Crown winner and Phalaenopsis is up for discussion next. Following her best year in 1998, Phalaenopsis would compete in but also find little success in graded races. She only took 1 second-place finish at the Sapporo Kinen and a victory in her final race in the Queen Elizabeth II Cup in 8 races after the Shuka Show. Be that as it may, a Double Crown winner is a Double Crown winner. I think she'd be good to add, but it also kind of feels like Cygames is done with the Golden Generation horses at this point. Phalaenopsis' brother Kazuna had a much better time in graded races, taking wins in the Japan Derby, Mainichi High, Kyoto Shimbun High, Osaka High, and the Prix-Nil in France. He also finished 4th in the Arc. Kizuna was a horse related to hope for recovery following the 2011 Tohoku earthquake, the strongest that had ever hit Japan and caused untold loss of life. The name Kazuna comes from the Japanese word for bond, following owner Shinji Maeda's reception he got from the people of Dubai as he was over there for the Dubai World Cup during the earthquake. Kazuna ended up becoming very popular, which you can see evidence for in the voting for the 2013 Arima Kinen, where he finished 2nd place, about 2,400 votes behind one of the most successful Japanese horses ever in Orfever. Kazuna is not only an important horse for Japan, but a winning one as well. And I think he has a really good chance of getting implemented, even if he did have a history of kicking a bunch of people. W Heart Bond is just getting started, but already has an impressive record. At 4 years old, she's already won the Champions Cup and Miyako Stakes and took podium finishes in all her other races, including the Breeders' Gold Cup and February Stakes. Even apart from that, she has a 100% podium finish record. I think it's still a little too early to say definitively if you ask me, but she's certainly set herself up well for the future. Heart's Cry started off his first year of racing to pretty mixed results, taking 3 victories, 3 other podium finishes, and 4 pretty bad results. He got much better results in 2005, where he earned his most notable victory, a win over Deep Impact in the Arima Kinen. This would be the only defeat Deep Impact would ever suffer. He also went on to be the first Japanese horse to win a G1 in Dubai. Admittedly, it does make it a little hard to implement Heart's Cry without Deep Impact, but if you could implement Kitasan Black without Duramente, I'm sure there could be workarounds. Admire Dawn started off his career by winning the Asahi High Futurity Stakes and then took on the Triple Crown races. While he raced in all 3 of them, he found not so much as a podium finish in any, but did end his 2002 by winning the JBC Classic in record time and taking 3rd in the Champions Cup. Thus, Admire Dawn is now a dirt racer, and in 2003, won 5 of 6 dirt races. Admire Dawn went on to win 6 G1 dirt races and retired alongside Admire Groove and Admire Max. The multiple-time Dirt Racer Award winner would make a really good implementation candidate, especially for interactions between his turf rivals, which I feel don't get a lot of attention, but also with his real-life full brother Admire Vega. Cosmo Bulk raced for a really long time to very mixed success. With a podium finish rate just below 40%, he had a primarily good 2004 with wins in some G2 and G3 races, but came up short in the Triple Crown set, with his best finish being a 2nd place trophy where he fell behind Daiwa Major. His career is mired in incredibly unique stats though. First off, in 2004, he set a record in the St. Light Kinen and won an H1 race in the Hokkaido Derby, which is apparently a special grade assigned to Hokkaido races. Cosmo Bulk ended his 2004 in controversy by allegedly getting more votes than first place Zeno Robroy, but since he belonged to the NAR and not the JRA at the time, all votes for him were invalid, which didn't prevent him from running in the race for some reason. Speaking of the Arima Kinen, he has the record for most consecutive Arima Kinen appearances being 6. Cosmo Bulk's biggest claim to fame may arguably be that he was the first NAR horse to win an overseas race, taking 1st place in the Singapore International Cup. I have no clue how you implement Cosmo Bulk, but this amount of weird surely has to amount to something. Surely. Company is a prominent miler who also raced for quite a long time. At 8 years old, he won 2 G2s in the Nakayama Kinen and Mainichi Okan, the latter of which he defeated Vodka, took 2nd in the Yomiuri Milers Cup, and won a pair of G1s in the Autumn Tenosho and Mile Championship, thus becoming the first 8-year-old horse to win a G1. Another fun fact is that while over 70% of racehorses don't ever win a single race, Company won at least one graded race in every year of competition. I don't think there's any rush for Company, but I think there's a non-zero chance for implementation, particularly if more of his rivals get added. Admire Kazen could be another add in a somewhat desolate sprinter and miler world. 2002's best sprinter had a good first year with a win in the Asahi High Futurity Stakes, but only managed to pick up one second place and one third place finish in 12 races until 2002. This would be where he would win the Tokyo Shimbun High, Hankyu High, and Yasuda Kinen. Admire Kazen was also sidelined for the entire year of 1999 and the first half of 2000 with a pretty serious injury, but managed to make a comeback when there was serious doubt on whether or not he would ever race again. It's this kind of story that works in his favor, even if his record speaks against him. So I for one think there's a possibility. Also, he's Aston Machan sire, and I think we need more Aston Machan representation. Success Brocken is one of those horses who's loosely referenced but not named. In his case, in Smart Falcon's story, they talk about a horse girl who has dark brown fur, was third favorite in the Japan Derby, and then placed last in said Derby. That was definitely a mark on Success Brocken's career, but he did manage 12 podium finishes and 3 graded victories in the Japan Dirt Derby, February Stakes, and Tokyo Daishoten. He's a pace chaser with quite a few rivals in umamusume already, as well as having been sired by Symbolic Chris S, so it probably gives him some legs to stand on should he be implemented, but I think he's probably towards the back of the line. Kafuji Take is another dirt racer with an oddball career. He spent effectively his first year and a half struggling through open and allowance races, ending up with 5 wins in 17 ungraded races. He did have a year stretch from mid-2016 to mid-2017 where he got 4 podium finishes, including a victory in the G3 Negishi Stakes, but pretty much floundered for the rest of his career. Though he was inconsistent with results, he did have a very long racing career and was almost always competitive as a graded racer. I'd be surprised to see him in umamusume, but I'd welcome it as Kapano Ricky's oddball friend. Glorious Noah has a pretty long racing career until you account for the fact that he stopped consistently racing in 2010. Up to that point though, he was pretty competitive, usually netting a top 5 finish and winning the Negishi Stakes and Munashino Stakes. But at the end of 2010 he suffered an injury and for some reason returned to racing after 2.5 years, placing last in the 2013 Prokyon Stakes, then suffered even more injuries, and then returned to place second to last in the Pollock Stakes in 2016. I don't know what his owner or trainer were thinking with this, but fortunately they thought better than to run the now 10-year-old horse out there again. That story alone sure does make him an oddity to discuss, but he does have some credence as a dirt runner who took second in the Japan Cup Dirt before his injuries, but once again I'd be surprised to see him. Karino May is a modern day racer and full of orfevre. She doesn't have a terribly good record, but her biggest claim to fame is probably her performance in the Tulip Show where she won despite being 9th favorite. After that though, the highest she's finished in 7 races is 4th, and her other results aren't exactly close. There's a way to go here before I could even think the word implementation. Getting away from precise end folds for just one moment, Saturnalia enters the discussion with 2 whole family members, being a full of Cesario and full brother to Epiphanea. Before he retired due to injury, he managed to pick up 2 G1 and 2 G2 wins. It's also worth noting that in Amon I's only loss in the 2019 Arima Keenan, Saturnalia ended up taking 2nd place. So if you really think about it, doesn't that make Saturnalia the better horse? Yeah, probably not, but he's still impressive. There's also a pretty funny story to be told between him and Epiphanea because they don't get along well, which seems to be a running theme with Epiphanea. Once they put the horses under the supervision of their father, Lord Kanaloa, the conflict mysteriously seems to have disappeared. Coincidentally, another full brother to both Epiphanea and Saturnalia, Leontes, also doesn't get along with a whole lot of horses. Make the call. It only took Leontes 29 days to win his first G1, which if you can believe it, is tied for a record. That would unfortunately also be his final victory, as he only raced 5 times before being forced into retirement due to injury. He went on to sire G1 winners T.O. Royal and Museum Mile though. I'm not sure how you can implement Leontes with a race record this small, but if we can give Agnes Tachyon and Fuji Kiseki a whole career mode, surely there's a dream for Leontes to live as well. Sakura Star O also had lots of racing success in his short career and short life. In 1987, he took victories in the Yayoi Show, Satsuki Show, and Kika Show after having to sit out from the Japan Derby due to injury. At the 1987 Arima Keenan, Sakura Star O suffered a horrible injury after allegedly getting his leg stuck in a hole in the course, which broke his leg. His jockey tried to get him off the field, but Sakura Star O wouldn't stop racing because of his desire to win. He didn't finish this race and would never race again. To some controversy, his owners desperately did all they could to keep him alive for as long as they could and tried to help him recover, but in reality there was nothing they could do, and eventually Sakura Star O was put to rest after a few months of trying to save his life. Sakura Star O went on to become another what-if horse, and even though the horse is beloved by both staff and fans alike, and we've seen other horses with tragic ends to their lives implemented, if it's up to the owner, Sakura Star O probably won't be implemented. To bring a somewhat happy thought to Sakura Star O though, the following year's winner of the Japan Derby, the race Sakura Star O sat out from during his career, was Sakura Chiyono O of the same farm. His staff said that the spirit of Sakura Star O was propelling the horse forward past Mejiro Ardon at the very end. There's no easy way to pivot from Sakura Star O, but Goldalore started his career with some success in his debut, but then they realized, hey, what if this horse was good on dirt? And then he won 7 of 8 dirt races. Goldalore is the only progeny of famous horse Sunday Silence to have won a dirt G1, and in fact won 4 of them. His only encounter with an umamusume appears to be with TGimlet in the Japan Derby, in which he himself placed 5th, but Goldalore is also the sire of a few horses we know like Espoir City, Smart Falcon, and Capano Ricky. He retired after falling all the way down to an uncharacteristic 11th place in the Teo show, after which he was found to have a throat disease. I think there's enough here to make a career out of, and I'm also not sure if any umamusume character actually has the Teo show in their career mode, so for that reason I want to see Goldalore implemented. Here we've got Beat Black, another horse with a questionable record to look at. A bit of an absent-minded horse, it took him 7 tries to win his first race, which is around the same amount of times it took me to pass my driver's test, and while he would race for a really long time, he'd amass a grand total of 1 graded victory. That graded victory, however, is the pinnacle of Beat Black's career. He won the 2012 Spring to No Show as 14th favorite, outracing horses like Tosin Jordan, Win Variation, and most notably, Orfever. Do I think that this one race is enough to get him implemented? Not really, but it is nice to dream. Deep Bond is another racer with inconsistent results due to having raced horses like Contrail, Equinox, and Title Holder. He took some wins in G2 races, but more often than not found himself in the top 5. He did get a win in the Prix when he went over to try and compete in the Arc though. He was noted as being wild in his youth, but eventually mellowed out with age, particularly after his retirement. His record gives off similar vibes to Nice Nature and Win Variation, so I think there's an argument there. Not every horse has to have a win rate over 80% after all. If they did, there'd only be 9 umamusume characters. Delta Blues raced for 6 years, but had most of his success between 2004 and 2007. After picking up a victory in his 6th attempt at a maiden race, he went on to win a couple allowance races before winning the 2004 Kika Show as 8th favorite. He finished out 2004 in 3rd and 5th place finishes in the Japan Cup and Arima Keenan behind winner Zeno Robroy. Delta Blues went on to win the G2 Stayer Stakes, but that was his only other win until 2006 when he traveled to Australia. Here, Delta Blues would surprisingly grab a 3rd place finish in the Caulfield Cup and win the Melbourne Cup, becoming the first Japanese racehorse to do so, which means we're gonna have to wait for the Australian excursion scenario. Here we have another horse notable by their absence in the Golden Generation. He only raced 12 times before retiring early due to injury, but managed to pick up victories over horses we know all too well, such as outlugging Grass Wonder in the Yasuda Keenan and beating King Halo in the Mile Championship. He was only ever off the podium twice, and both of these were in his 3rd and 4th races. At 31, he's also one of the oldest living racehorses, and the only living racehorse to have won a Japanese G1 in 1998. I think there's a pretty obvious problem here that isn't necessarily the horse's fault, so unless we're getting a Zipperman workaround, then I think it might be hard to implement him. Chronogenesis' sister, Normcore, spent a lot of time in the mile graded scene. She collected victories in the Shion Stakes, Fuji Stakes, and Sapporo Keenan, as well as setting the record time in the Victoria Mile and in her final race in the Hong Kong Cup, which also means that she has an overseas victory, whereas Chronogenesis does not. With her more recent rivals getting implemented, I think there's a good chance we could see Normcore in the game. Kitasan Black didn't only sire Equinox, he also sired a pretty strong dirt racer who's still competing today in Wilson Tesoro. Speaking of Equinox, that was the horse who won the first race Wilson Tesoro partook in. His team quickly realized that he may be better suited for dirt though, so they took him off the turf, and since 2021 has picked up 3 G3 and 3 G1 victories. He's competed overseas a few times to good results, and competed with the likes of Ushpa Tesoro, Lemon Pop, and Forever Young. He finally crossed the 1 billion yen earnings mark just this year, and doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. As you may have guessed, Wilson Tesoro is owned by the same person who owns Ushpa Tesoro, and so at this point they may just be a package deal. Jantar Mantar has either finished on the podium or in 13th place in Hong Kong. Those excursions aren't as easy as they look. He's already won 5 G1s, including the 2025 Yasuda Keenan and Mile Championship, the latter of which he set the record for during a year where he traded victories with Gaia Force. He's also won all of the turf G1s not called the Hanshin Juvenile Fillies for obvious reasons. If Jantar Mantar keeps it up, he'll not only have a chance to put his name in the history books, but will also probably win the arguably more illustrious umamusume implementation. Alluded to earlier, Title Holder won 4 G1s over his career, which somehow contributed to a record-winning line of 5 horses whose parents also won G1 races. He'd also be the 3rd horse in a set of Euphoria and Shahryar who all won one of the 2021 Triple Crown Classic races. His best year was probably his following year, as he won a G2 and 2 G1 races, setting the record in the Takarazuka Keenan. Title Holder has a very interesting history with being portrayed in the media, who for some reason make it seem like he fights bears and wears tuxedos, and I think he should have a chance to experience that after being turned into an anime girl, because I think it's funny. Just Away is a late-blooming horse who collected 2 victories and 3 other podium finishes in his first 12 races. He then took at least second in 8 of his last 10, including setting a record at the Dubai Duty Free. Just Away is also Goldship's best friend and would often travel with him because they got along with each other so well. Just Away did have a problem with Orfevre though, and the two would often have to be separated or they'd fight. He also won the World's Best Racehorse Award in 2014, which Japanese horses rarely win, putting him in the same discussion as horses like Trev, Enable, and American Pharaoh. You know what they say, any horse with a tie to Goldship should be implemented in umamusume. They all say that. Curran Muradic raced for 8 years, but was most successful from 2011 to 2013. Of course, he also spent those years primarily racing in allowance races, but had 13 podium finishes in 21 races until he won the Kinko show. He found a new confidence, so he entered the Arima Keenan, where he placed 6th. Also, he never won a race again after the Kinko show. His longevity in the racing world is definitely what makes him unique to look at. Retiring at 10 years old and seeing off Orfevre in his final race, and still being there to race Kitas on Black in his final race 4 years later. That's quite a startling thing to think about, but I'm also really not sure how you can translate that into a career mode. Maybe it's a scenario link, or maybe in the Dream Trophy League. Who remembers that? I do. Oh hey, it's Admiraterra, the true winner of the 2025 Japan Cup. That's definitely what he's most known for, as he would have won if he carried his jockey to the finish line. He does, however, perennially stick around graded races and is still looking for his first G1 victory at the time of writing. He does also have the record in the Hanshin Daishoten, which was previously held by Narita Toproad, which is the second time I've mentioned the 2001 Hanshin Daishoten in this video. Admiraterra probably still has a ways to go before implementation would be possible, so until he wins at G1, he'll probably end up being an unnamed reference in Museum Mile or Croix du Nord's story. There isn't a lot to talk about with Sonny Bryan, but he is a Double Crown racehorse. Unfortunately, as a result of injury, his victory in the Japan Derby would be his final race, but he won both that and the Satsuki show as heavy underdog in each. Still, he collected 3 wins and 2 other podium finishes in 6 races in 1997, so the expectation was that he had a very good shot at being a Triple Crown winner. The 1997 Kika show winner would end up being Machikane Fukukitaro. There's a lot of links here, so I'd say there's a decent chance we could see something, but I don't think he would be at the top of the priority list. Mer de Glace took a while to win his maiden race, but once he got out of the allowance race dimension, he went crazy. In 2019, he picked up 4 graded victories in a row, including winning the G1 Caulfield Cup in Australia, overtaking Vow and Declare, who would get his revenge in the following Melbourne Cup. Mer de Glace would retire following his Australian excursion due to injury. I got a suspicious amount of horses that would work well in an Australian excursion scenario, and I think he probably fits here as well. Legacy World has one of the longest lists of rivals in this entire video, but it's unfortunately also from a period that's largely already been covered story-wise to this point. That doesn't preclude him from being in the discussion though, as he's won the St. Light Keenan and in a crazy field in the Japan Cup, defeating the likes of French horse Kodasha, New Zealand horse Naturalism, and horses we know like Winning Ticket and Rice Shower. The aforementioned issue though is that by the time Tokai Teo and Mejiro McQueen's stories were finished, Legacy World became a shell of his former self after an injury in 1994. With his highest finish in 14 races being 4th over his final 2 years. I don't think he'd be a high priority, especially since he had only 1 good year in graded races, but as a foil to the other characters he raced, it could be something to build off of. Tastiera is actually a horse who retired at last year's Arima Keenan after having won the Japan Derby, placing 2nd in both the Satsuki show and Kika show, and winning the Hong Kong Queen Elizabeth II Cup. He's got some bad connotations surrounding him in both of these particular victories, as 2 horses he competed with suffered life-ending injuries. That's obviously not his fault, but some people look at him negatively because of it. Tastiera was probably one of the strongest horses of his generation, landing on the podium more than half the time and competed with horses we've heard of before like Museum Mile, Doduce, and Masquerade Ball. Also, he has a heart on his head. For this alone, implementation is nigh. Maybe you're nay. Mersault not only brings in the crossover appeal from Limbus Company, but has a really impressive if not short racing career to go with it. He just picked up his first graded victory in April after placing 2nd in a Dirt G1. He also took a victory in a race called the Ultra Premium Buena Vista Cup, and that's hilarious. It's definitely too early to tell, but keep an eye on Mersault. Embroidery is also off to a hot start early in her career, having already become a Double Crown horse with victories in the Oka show and Shuka show, which brings her up to 4 graded victories. Last year's best 3-year-old filly made up for her loss in the Japanese Oaks by recently defeating winner Kamennyak in the Hanshin Himba Stakes. It's too early to make any claims for Embroidery as well, but if she continues this way, then we can definitely talk about her some more down the line. We talked a little bit about Agnes Flora before, but just as a refresher, she's the 1990 Oka show winner who was the dam of Agnes Tachyon and Agnes Flight, which makes her a rare case of a dam who produced 2 G1 winners. Much like her foals, she also had her career ended way way too soon by a leg injury, so we never really got to see what she could do beyond 6 races. There isn't a whole lot else to talk about with Agnes Flora, to be honest, but as I've said many times already, a career-ending injury doesn't necessarily mean you'll never be an umamusume. Whoever submitted Meisho Tabaru wrote in that he just looks friendly, and I'm inclined to agree. To date, he's got 3 graded wins, with his most notable being the 2025 Takarazuka Kinen, a race his father was also pretty famous for winning. He's also unpredictable when it comes to odds. Several times the odds marked him as high favorite, such as in the Satsuki Show or Kika Show, where he was the 4th or 5th favorite respectively, and placed way in the back. Other times he's notched as the 7th or 5th favorite and ends up winning. He's inherited unpredictability, and I'm terrified. His record is a little spotty, but I'm sure I've said that it doesn't matter before, so let's just rely on the comedy stocks for Meisho Tabaru's implementation. Stars on Earth is a double tiara winner with rotten luck past that. She never picked up another victory after her win in the Japanese Oaks, with several people pointing to her gate positioning as the reason. She did manage to pick up an impressive amount of podium finishes nonetheless, with more being incredibly close finishes. Considering she ran exclusively in G1s after that point, that's no mean feat. I wouldn't be surprised to see her implemented. When Contrail became a Triple Crown racehorse, his biggest opposition was Salios, who placed 2nd in both the Satsuki Show and Japan Derby. Apart from competing there, he also picked up wins in the Asahi High Futurity Stakes and the 2020 and 2022 Mainichi Okan. He also took on famous miler Gran Allegria in the Mile Championship twice, which didn't really work out for him. Apparently his nickname is Tissue Box, which got so popular that he's a collaboration with a tissue box company that I can't find pictures of, so I'm just gonna trust the survey on this one. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, I think Salios might hinge on Contrail, but anything more for Gran Allegria is welcome too. Loveson literally started racing last November, but already has 2 G1 victories from the Hopeful Stakes and Satsuki Show, the latter of which he set the record for. There isn't a whole lot to go off of for this frontrunner yet, so this is the shortest introduction in this whole video, but watch the classics for Loveson. Tosho Boy wrote up quite the impressive resume 50 years ago. He's a double crown horse after winning the Satsuki Show and Kika Show, but also won the Kyoto Shimbunhai, Arima Kinen, Takarazuka Kinen, and set the record in the Kobe Shimbunhai, among others. It's also worth noting that this middle distancer also won the Takamatsu no Miya High, but this was before it was changed to a short distance race, so I think it'd be funny if he participated in that during a career. Tosho Boy was also nicknamed Tenma, not Tenna, which means Pegasus for the way he glided across the course. He's also a stallion who appears a lot in pedigree charts, as you'll see him in the lineage for horses like Vodka, Sweep Tosho, and Machikane Fukukitaro. I'm a little surprised Tosho Boy isn't an umamusume already, to tell you the truth. If you've perused Neo Universe's page, then you've seen That's the Plenty's name, as he was the horse who cost Neo Universe the Triple Crown. Well, by winning the race anyway, he didn't really do much else. Speaking of not doing much else, his only other graded victory was in the Radio Tampa High. That said, his racing career does cover a period that could stand to be covered more, so the more umamusume reps we get, the more likely we are to see TGimlet animated. No. Real Steel has a surprising amount of connections to umamusume. First off, he's sired Forever Young, which I'm pretty sure means you're guaranteed to be implemented. Secondly, he won his only G1, the 2017 Dubai Turf, on March 26th. That was the same day that his full sister Loves Only You was born, which is also a few weeks before the first footage of the mobile game was shown off. As for his racing record, he also managed to pick up wins in the Toki no Minoru Kinen and Mainichi Okan. There is another problem with his name that might need to be skirted, but now that I'm thinking about it, I'm pretty sure his son might fall under the same category. These next horses are all international racers who competed against specific umamusume. Since they aren't Japanese, I doubt they'll be implemented. If we do see them, they might be in an anime going by a different name, a la Singre. You might have heard of Magnitude recently. He's famous for having defeated Forever Young in the Dubai World Cup and for having a teddy bear. His victory over Forever Young was his first G1 among 3 other G1 victories. He'll definitely be turned into an umamusume when the Forever Young anime gets made. Romantic Warrior of Hong Kong is the only horse to have won 4 Hong Kong Cups, which fits nicely into his 16 total G1 victories, which conveniently includes the 2024 Yasuda Kinen. He's defeated horses we know like Liberty Island, Masquerade Ball, and Forever Young, so you know where he's gonna appear. See the Stars is an Irish horse who had one of the best racing years ever in 2009, where he won 6 G1s in 6 months, including the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe. This also made him the only horse to have won the Arc, the Epsom Derby, and the 2000 Guinness in the same year. He then went on to become a very successful sire, with progeny including last year's Arc winner Darais. I'm not sure how you shoehorn See the Stars in umamusume unless you use his progeny in a sort of way that Mancha is used. You could use him as a parental figure for Darais going up against Croix du Nord in the Arc, but Croix du Nord didn't really have a race worth showcasing in that particular arc. Indigenous is an Irish-born horse who raced primarily in Hong Kong and a few times in Japan, most notably in the 1999 Japan Cup, which was won by Special Week. His best 3 years were naturally his first 3 years, where he won the Hong Kong Champions and Chater Cup, Hong Kong Gold Cup twice, and the Hong Kong Vase. He raced in Japan at least once per year between 1999 and 2002, but never found victory there. Like others we've talked about, Indigenous is part of a story that's largely already been told, so unless Stay Gold is getting an anime, it'd probably be difficult to see Indigenous getting the treatment. Naturalism is one of the top horses from New Zealand who won 5 G1 races and competed in both the 1992 and 93 Japan Cups. In 1992, he placed second behind Tokai Teo in a race also featuring Akuno Dictus, and in 1993 placed 9th in a race that featured Rice Shower, Mejiro Palmer, Nice Nature, Machikane Tannhauser, and Winning Ticket. The Australian Derby winner's trainer went on to say that his 1992 Japan Cup performance was his most impressive race ever, as he typically ran in races 2,000 meters or less. Naturalism would be a foil to Teo primarily, as both of them had similar comeback arcs after handfuls of setbacks. The problem remains that Teo's story has pretty much already been told, but I also always thought that Ellerslie Pride was one of the cooler characters from Singray, so I think we should get more oceanic representation. From the same 1992 Japan Cup, we had English mare User Friendly, who was coming off a tear in Europe. She entered the 1992 Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe undefeated and placed second, and then headed over to the 1992 Japan Cup, where she would, of course, lose to Tokai Teo, placing 6th. She would, however, get back to her winning ways in Europe, being named 1992 Horse of the Year there. Again, Teo is the obvious link, so unless we get a Teo vacation arc, it'd be hard to imagine seeing user-friendly around. Golden Pheasant is the winner of the 1991 Japan Cup, where he defeated Mejiro McQueen and Mejiro Ardon. Apart from those victories, he also won the Prix Niel in France and a few races in America, most notably the Arlington Million, which is another G1. After his racing career, he would return to Japan to stand stud. You could probably do something here with Mejiro McQueen's pen pal, who eventually moved over. That's what the survey entry says anyway. This section is a group of international horses from what I like to call the wow, someone really wants an El Condor Pasa excursion anime to be made section. Croco Rouge was El Condor Pasa's main rival during his excursion to France, as he dueled him in the Prix d'Espagne, Prix Foy, and the Arc. Over his career, he picked up 2 G1 victories and found himself on the podium in all but 3 of his races, having otherwise battled with Montja, Dreamwell, and Sagamex. Croco Rouge retired in the same year as El Condor Pasa and eventually went to Japan to stud. He also shares a sire with Sakura Laurel. Admittedly, I haven't done any reading on Star Blossom, but he might fit there despite the fact that they just barely missed each other. Borgia was another of El Condor Pasa's rivals in Europe, most notably coming second in the Prix Foy. She did end up winning 3 G1s over her career, including ending her career with a victory in the 1999 Hong Kong Vase. She'd also take 8th in the 1999 Japan Cup. Tiger Hill was the horse who took second to El Condor Pasa in the Grand Prix de St. Cloud, but also racked up 3 G1 victories over his career, including 2 consecutive victories in the Grosser Prix von Baden. Much like Borgia, he also competed in the Japan Cup, but took 10th place. Fantastic Light is a United States-born horse who competed all over the world. For our purposes, this includes the 2001 Dubai Shima Classic against Stay Gold, the 2000 Japan Cup against TM Opera O and Meisho Dodo, and also the 1999 Arc against El Condor Pasa. There's just no escaping her. He picked up several wins toward the end of his career, including the G1's Breeders' Cup Turf, Irish Championship Stakes, Prince of Wales Stakes, and Tattersall's Gold Cup. It'd be hard to place him, but he's an excursion horse worth looking into if you were so interested. Delamy earned 7 G1 victories racing all over the world, including picking up a victory in his final race, the Breeders' Cup Turf. He was also in El Condor Pasa's running of the Arc, but came in an uncharacteristic 9th place. Leading into that race though, he was on a 3 G1 winning streak. And now, the last 3 horses who don't fit in any particular category. Forever Young is already in umamusume, so I'll move on. Yeah, it's one of those sections. War Admiral is an American Triple Crown winner who rivaled Seabiscuit. He was sired by famous racehorse Manowar, who got 20 wins and 1 second place finish in 21 races, and also won a race by over 100 lengths once. But I'm not here to talk about Manowar. War Admiral eclipsed those numbers and set the time record in the Belmont Stakes. The only way I can think of War Admiral being implemented is if American Pharaoh ends up being a good sire in Japan, since American Pharaoh has War Admiral in his pedigree. Otherwise, it's a pipe dream. And the final horse that was submitted via the survey was... Yeah, the video is over now.